up guys, this is a reshoot of a video that I did before about learning your thick E string, and by learning your thick E string you actually learn your thin E string at the same time. Let's get on with this video. There's a good reason behind learning this, and it's part of the start of really understanding how to find anything or any note that you need on the fretboard. First things we need to do is we need to look at the names of the strings. We're going to go from north to south. If you want to think about it, ceiling to floor. We've got E, A, D, G, B, E. Now that is tricky to remember, so what we do is we use a mnemonic, and the one that I particularly like to use that sticks in my head is Eddie Ate Dynamite Good by Eddie. Thing to notice there guys is that we get an E at the thickest string here, and then that's right at the top here towards the ceiling, and then right at the bottom here towards the floor, the thinnest string that we get is also an E. So the really cool thing about this is if you learn this thick E string, you're also learning this thin E string as well. Now, why do you need to know your E string? You need to know your thick E string here because this is generally where we start by learning how to launch into specific keys, scales, chords, arpeggios. So for instance, if I wanted to play the A major scale, I would find the note A and on the E string here, and I would play the pattern like this. But the thing is, I needed to start on the thick E string to make that happen. That was just a use case with the scale. There is the A chord. I'm using the same principle there guys. I'm finding that A there, I'm putting on this shape here to make the rest of that chord, and that gives me an A major chord. So I hope you get the idea that this is why we need to be able to find any note on that thick E string. It's the first port of call really for learning the names of the notes on your fretboard. Now these notes here, they don't actually mean anything. I know we use alphabet letters to label these sounds here. This note here, E, that one there, that is 82.41 Hertz. We don't want to have to call it 82.41 Hertz when we want to tell somebody, oh, I'm playing the E note. It's a lot easier if we just say that's an E note. So instead of using the frequencies, what we do is we use alphabet letters. Now, the first thing I want you to do is look at this diagram here below, and you can see that the musical alphabet goes A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then once we get to G, it goes back to A again. And just so you know, the A is 110 Hertz. You see how awkward it would be to try and remember the names of all these frequencies for all these notes. It would be a right mess, and it would be hard for us to understand how to build chords and understand a lot of music theory as well at the end of the day. So now we've established that we use the musical alphabet letters, the A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and it goes back to A again, then what we're going to do is we're going to start on the E. Now notice that this doesn't start on A because that's what the A string actually does. But if we're starting on E here, then we have to follow that sequence. So we're going to go E, and then the next note we need is an F. The thing to get here is that E and F and B and C are always 1 fret apart. That is a half step, guys. This is open here, so that's 0, and then if we go up 1 fret, then that gets us to the F. So this is E, open E string, and if I fret at the first fret on that thick E string, that gives me an F note. So get E and F. It's worth noting, if we look at B and C, let's use the open B string in this example. There's the B, and the C is going to be 1 fret up as well. That's that half step thing happening there. Every time you come across two notes that aren't E and F and B and C, they are always going to be a whole step apart, which is 2 frets. So let's just look at that there. So if I went E, F, and then I go up a whole step, which is 2 frets, 1, 2 frets there, that gets me to the next letter after F, which is A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So we get to the G there. Now remember, when we get to the G, we're going to go back to the beginning of the musical alphabet, so we have to go to A. Now because A doesn't fall under E, F and B and C thing again, what we do is we just go up a whole step again, which is 2 frets, which means we go up to the 5th fret, and that finds the A for us. So we've got that A there, and remember I played that in that scale earlier on. So using that model, if I take the A and I go up to the next note, A to B, is it part of E, F, B, C? No, it isn't. So it's going to go up a whole step, and that gets me to the B. But if we remember, B and C are neighbours. These are next door to each other, they're only a half step up. So here's B and here's C. We want the D, then what we have to do is we have to go up a full step again. And that's the D there. And then to finish it off, to get back to the E, we go up a whole step again. So there's the E. Now the thing you might have noticed is that this is E and the open string. And if we get to the 12th fret, which is double dots, then we get the E again. This interval here, this distance, this gap between this note and this note here, this E and this E, is called an octave. And essentially, this and this are the same thing. So anything that happens here, this is just a repeat. And this is going to make sense when we look at how the guitar fretboard is laid out for us. If we've got a dot at the 3rd fret, a dot at the 5th fret, a dot at the 7th fret, and a dot at the 9th fret. Well, if we think that this is 0, it's the same as 0, the equivalent of 0, then this would be the equivalent of the 3rd fret, this would be the equivalent of the 5th fret, this would be the equivalent of the 7th fret, and this would be the equivalent of the 9th fret, but an octave higher than the dot that is in the lower part of the fretboard. Now you still have to remember that this is 15, 17, 19 and 21. Because when you're reading tabs, you need to understand those number values. But what I want to do is I want to come down here, because the majority of most guitar playing life is spent in these 7 frets here, sort of from the 1st to the 7th fret. If you get to play up the dusty end of the neck, you're very, very fortunate and you're very lucky. But the majority of your guitar playing will be done here within the first sort of 7 frets. So it makes sense to know the notes there. And what we have is something that I call the gift of the gab. If we look at the dot at 3, we get a G note. If we look at the dot at 5, we get an A note. And if we look at the dot at the 7th fret there, we get a B note. So we get G, A, B. Now if you know somebody who's good at talking, then they have got something called the gift of the gab. And this is what this is here, guys. This is going to tell you these starting notes. So if you wanted to play something like my L7 grid lesson in the key of G, then this would be your starting note. You would play chord 1, chord 4, chord 5, chord 6, chord 3, chord 2 here. And that would outline the whole of the key of G major for you. But this is a transposable idea as well. So what if we did it from A? What if we did it from B? Then this is the usefulness of this gift of the gab. And don't forget, G, A, B is going to be reflected and mirrored on this thin E string as well. So we've got the E and the F and the B and the C. Now it can be tricky to remember all this stuff, so here's a mnemonic I want you to memorize. E and F is eggs fried, and B and C is bacon crispy. It's about how you like to have your breakfast. Well, how I like to have my breakfast.
Eggs and bacon, is it?
Yeah.
I like my eggs fried and I like my bacon crispy. If you just remember that silly little story, it will help you to remember which ones are this half step or neighbour notes here that are only 1 fret apart. Everything else, like I say, is 2 frets apart. So F to G, 2 frets, G to A, 2 frets, A to B, 2 frets, C to D, 2 frets, D to E, 2 frets. Now you might be saying, well, what's in between these 2 fret jobs, Ricky? And if you think about it, and you already know and you've heard about sharps and flats, that's what lives in there, but we will tackle that in a future video, not in this one here. But if you know that, then you can make that assumption. Now the thing is, guys, I don't want you to just try and memorize this. I want you to write this out. And if you look in the description of this video, I've done a PDF for you there where you can use a pencil, not a pen, use a pencil because you can rub it out, and you can plot out these notes. And by plotting it out, then it will ingrain it into you. Sometimes you just need to write things out, get a fretboard diagram and write out the notes. It helps. It might be the way that absolutely nails it for you. So have a go at that homework there, guys. There is homework. And if you have done your homework, let me know in the comments below, and it'd be great to see you in the Facebook group. There's a link to that in the description there, where I do more exclusive lessons in there, and I'll be able to talk to you as part of my community over there, guys. Let me just show you another use case for understanding these notes on the E string as well. If we wanted to play an E5 power chord, we would go this open E, and we would play this note here, the 2nd fret on the A string, and just play those two there. That gives us our humble power chord shape there. Now if I wanted that to be an F5 power chord, I would do exactly the same thing again. I would find my F, which is the root note, and when it says F5, which is what a power chord is, then what we do is we count up 5 from the F using the major scale. We go 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the 5th note up from the F. Play those two together. That gives me my F5 power chord. By knowing the names of the notes on my E string, I can find these power chords and these root notes and these key notes, these tonics, all the way up the neck. Anywhere I want to. Want a B? There's a B there. Play it as a power chord. There it is. Want it as a minor pentatonic? There's the B. That's where the scale happens. So this is critical for you understanding where you are. But another thing that's critical after the E string is that you know your A string as well. And you can learn that in this video here. Hey up guys, if you'd like to support my work on YouTube, then please consider purchasing a copy of my book. The book is a compilation of PDFs from all the aha and lightbulb moment lessons that you can find here on my YouTube channel, but all in one convenient place. It's available in 3 formats: a spiral bound copy, a paperback, but if you prefer an ebook for instant download, then you can grab that by clicking the link in this video or going to rickysguitar.com/store to grab your copy.